Well, I would distinguish between Bitcoin and crypto because there are lots of okay, so let's just backtrack a bit. Every time you have a new breakthrough technology, you almost always, it is accompanied with a speculative bubble. So if you think of the internet, there was a huge bubble in .com stocks, and the story around the internet was, the internet is going to change the world. And that story was right. It is going to change the world. It did change the world. But that didn't stop loads of stupid speculative money going in and, how many .com effectively scam companies there were, people raising money for just ridiculous companies. And you had it with the railways, for example, in the 1830s and the 1850s in America and the UK. There were huge bubbles around railway technology. And it just always happens. You get a new technology and, everyone gets very excited about it and it gets ahead of itself. But you need bubbles because bubbles accelerate the investment. So if we didn't have that bubble in tech in 2000, the railway tracks wouldn't have been laid, the cables wouldn't have been laid. So it accelerates investment. So, a lot of people say, bubbles are terrible. Now, but what you have with Bitcoin, it's a new technology, it's a breakthrough technology. But not only that, it's a new technology that is a new system of money. So if you were like a Marvel comic superhero designing like the ultimate bubble, it would be Bitcoin. And there's a finite supply of it. So that again drives up, increases the speculative potential of it. And so it is inherently bubbly. And people go, Bitcoin's a bubble. There have been about maybe 5 booms and busts in Bitcoin in the 10 years that it's evolved. It is inherently speculative. And if you think of all the, they're known in the crypto community as shit coins. But if you think of all the shit coins that have sprung up, on the back of Bitcoins, there's about 95% of them are scams one way or the other. So there are loads of scams in the Bitcoin space. And then there's the story that Jamie Bartlett's he did on the radio about the crypto queen. It's just a massive, massive scam. And I believe the people that were involved in that scam believed in it when they were operating, but that was a sort of self-delusion thing. I think, the best scammers actually they kid themselves when they're performing the scam. So when Jim says it is, it is full of scams and frauds and all the rest of it, but Bitcoin itself is not a fraud. And Jim has made a big mistake. Jim's, he studies money and has been writing about it. Jim should have just bought some Bitcoins. And because you just look at it and you go, it might not be, but it has the potential to be the default cash system of the internet. And remember, the internet is a borderless medium, effectively.
And why is that, Dominic? What makes Bitcoin so good for being the exchange medium of the internet?
Because I distinguish between cash and money. So if you go into a sweet shop and you'd get your card out and you buy whatever you buy in the sweet shop and you go bloop with your card, that is not a cash transaction because it involves a card company and a bank and all sorts of middlemen processing that transaction. And all these middlemen, they take their cut on the transaction and they all know there is a record of that transaction having taken place. If I go into the sweet shop and I buy a newspaper, whatever it is, and I give the newspaper man £1 or whatever the cost of the newspaper is, it is a direct transaction, cash transaction that involves no middlemen. And we're going into this kind of cashless society at the moment, but we need cash. You need cash for small transactions, for private transactions, for quick transactions, but especially, illegal transactions. There are all reasons. That's why you need it. And, you can say, well, cash is illegal, but you can then make the argument, well, no, the law is immoral. It's not me that's buying weed that's being immoral and using cash. It is the law making weed that's immoral and it's forcing me into an illegal, so it's not a cut and dry thing. But we need cash. And above all, we need cash for privacy and to protect privacy. And Bitcoin is cash for the internet. In other words, if I want to send money from me to you, I can send it directly from me to you with no middleman. and nobody else need know about that transaction. And it can happen privately, it can happen instantly, it can happen for tiny amounts of money, fractions of a penny, and so that's how it is cash.
But aren't all Bitcoin transactions traceable?
They are. Every Bitcoin transaction is broadcast on the blockchain, which is effectively a huge database. So you can see that money, this amount of money, went from this wallet with this address to this wallet with this address.
Right.
But what you can't see is who owns the two wallets. So if you want to keep your wallet address private, then you keep it private, and then you can keep it private. There's also things called Bitcoin mixers and all sorts of little technologies that have been added on, which basically obfuscate. They put loads of transactions into one thing, muddle them all up, and so it all gets obfuscated, so it makes it very hard to trace.
And where do you stand on this argument that goes, hang on, aren't you just encouraging the Wild West nature of the internet? You know, these nefarious people who want to, trade in anything from, drugs to child pornography to whatever it is, and Bitcoin is essentially aiding that.
It certainly facilitates and aids illegal activity. But if you look at somebody's done a study on it, and the amount of Bitcoins that are actually used for the kind of transactions you described, it's like fewer than 2% or something. It's like an incredibly small percentage.